Welcome to And This Is Why It Sucks. It's relaunch of this podcast. I'm your host, Sean. I've been thinking about relaunching this podcast in a live platform somewhere in the afternoon for a while. And after, I became made available to the industry again, from being a reformed IT guy, I decided I would keep grinding on podcasting and posting content between all the podcast platforms and Rumble. But as I've had a chance to observe our current culture from a total 3,000-foot view, I guess is the best way I would put it lately, I've come to the conclusion that I think our society or our culture is in decline in a number of ways. Coming from timcast.com today, I read an article about, and that's his news site, not him, about a Republican city councilwoman who was shot by, it looks politically motivated. The story's still developing, so I'm not going to get too much into it. The fact that we can have political debates has always been a thing in the United States. But why is it now coming to the point where we all think we need to go take our pound of flesh out one way or another with violence? Now, I understand there is a point in time for violence, but I don't think we're there yet. We're getting closer. I don't understand why people are getting so riled up about things that are stupid. Let's look at the Hunter Biden stuff. Okay. So, how many times have we heard about this last month about classified documents? And now if we've been on the right side, which I'm not, I don't know how to put it, I'm very far into the ANCAP weeds nowadays. But as I've watched with what's going on with culture, specifically the news cycle and those documents, they brought up Trump. Now we find out Biden's got it. My question isn't about either one of them having the documents. It's actually about the organizations that create those documents. How are they letting anyone get a hold of classified documents without them not knowing where the hell they are? Because that seems like a bigger problem than the former VP, now president, and the former president, now he's not a president, who have, the president had the power to declassify things, but Biden didn't. The question is not so much about either one of those, because I think we'll find classified documents in a lot of people's hands. The question is, how the hell did they get them? Have you ever met somebody that has to make documents for classified consumption? Have you ever talked to someone or known someone who had to pull a clearance? That's not easy. There's a lot of character references and checks that go into that to help safeguard our country. So I don't understand how magically documents just magically, when you have to view them, you have to usually sign on. They watch you read them, put them back in the case, and you take off. How is it that these documents are just ending up in people's homes? I don't care if they're secure or not. How the hell did they get out of the secure location? That, to me, seems like a larger problem. But I digress. Let's get out of the culture war or the news cycle stuff. Let's talk about movies. When's the last time you saw a really kick-ass movie that just rocked? For me, it was Maverick. Top Gun Maverick. I don't understand how many times you can remake Spider-Man. I don't understand how many times you can remake X-Men, the comic movies. How many new versions of Batman can we have? Where are the new storylines from the newer creators, and why aren't they being looked at and made? There's a lot of clowning going around in the comic book world right now about Eric July and Isom. But you know what? Having consumed the book before I quit my job, I can say that it was one of the newest, most interesting storylines I read, in that there's a lot of open-ended pieces that I want to find out. Okay? But this is a new culture entry. Now, I didn't look at his race, and nor did I actually care, because the story was interesting. I have a lot more questions I want to know, and that's the type of hook I'm trying to look for in the cultural references or the media I consume. You know, if you look at comics, how many times, I mean, since we're talking about movies and comics, how many times have they reinvented, you know, Spider-Man and multiverses? You know, the one character that they brought out that was supposedly homosexual during the DC Comics multiverse stuff, they took the opportunity to make a established character. They retconned him and made him gay. And that's kind of cheesy if you ask me, and not because they made him gay, but there was a huge opportunity for them to bring in something with a unique storyline. Have that person, have Hal Jordan die, have the Ring choose someone worthy who's just happens to be gay. You know, I don't understand the mindset of trying to fit and shoehorn so many culture war or cultural identity pieces into a character for each time. Let the character develop, and if that's part of it, that's part of it. If it's not, it's not. If they're interesting, people will like it. If it's not, it's played out. You know, I don't know if I'm like Stan from South Park, where he eventually got to an age where things started sucking and it just started reminding him of crap. But music seems pretty dead to me too. You know, it seems like the music I grew up with in the 90s and the early 2000s seems like it was the apex of music, because new music is really derivative, really drab, really boring. It isn't until you see someone like Tom MacDonald doing something, calling out people. And people clown on Tom MacDonald and say he's a grifter. They say the same thing about Tim Pool making new music. The difference is they're trying to jam stuff into the cultural spaces for people like me who have just kind of walked away and said, I'm done with you cultural idiots, because you're not talking to me anymore. All you're doing is evangelizing politics rather than going towards making good content. You know, I found myself, as my primary podcast is New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union, and it's geared towards guns and politics. I find myself in there, I see more creators that are doing more interesting things, more nuanced things than anywhere else. And why is that? Because we love freedom. We love our country. And we're not afraid to take risks, because we've taken risks just by telling you we like the 2A. Nowadays, that's akin to saying, you know, one of those cultural determinants like trans or gay. It's becoming that way, that if you say you like guns, you're looked down upon for a little bit by both sides. We're the guys that are always on the fringe and the margin, but secretly you guys are all about us. So I don't understand how culture is going downhill when there's so much momentum into changing it. You know, we're in a space right now where you don't need a movie theater to get off and start making your own movies. You don't need a publisher or a book house to write your own book and get it out. You can go directly to the consumer and start talking about what you want to talk about. And that's what led me to bring up or start trying to podcast. During the COVID crap, for 3 years, being stuck at home basically for 2.5 of those, trying to work from home and trying to support people technology-wise, which I can, mostly, it's just frustrating to see that when you get back in the office, nothing really changed. In fact, people that used to claim that they were different by design and do stuff differently, now they conform exactly back to those pieces that we were trying to leave behind in the new world. And as we set our sights on the new world with new generations around us, why aren't we doing things different? You know, we consume mass media in the same places the same way. Why? You know, I'm one of those weird risk takers that actually goes out and checks out weird movies, weird books and stuff just to see what's different. Now, I have my preferences naturally. like everybody does. But why have we become, as an American populace, so risk adverse? Why are we not going out and just checking things out? You know, I watch podcasts or VODs or whatever they're called nowadays, and I like Tim Pool. I like The Quartering. I like Sydney Watson. I like all the gun tubers. And what I like about them is they're creating content directly for me and their audience. But you can only cover something for so long, and they get stuck in the news cycle. And since the news cycle right now is very slow, they all become very derivative. I can only hear so much about Eliza Blue before I check out. I was, like most, I think, lulled into thinking she was a good person. It's looking like she's not. But Jeremy, one of the coolest guys I see, who calls out a lot of bull crap, is writing this to the ground for no reason, man. You could find 1,000,000,001 different stories to make something better, and it would be more interesting. Same with Tim, as he's trying to have to fight the way I see with Tim Pool is you can't be top of the heap without people taking shots at you. He knows that, but at the same time, man, you got to get tired if you're at the top of the heap. And I don't mean to be derogatory towards Jeremy or any of these people for doing what they do and making the content. I'm very thankful that they brought the story up. But I think we've went past that now, and you've won. You've gotten people like me who were supporters of Eliza Blue to wake up and say, oh, that was probably a bad plan. She's a bad actor. That's all you have to say. We're done there. Okay? I think it's kind of cool that Tim's sending Shane Cashman out there, and for all the press that Jeremy from The Quartering was giving about Shane Cashman not possibly being a shill, is what it kind of led off on. I don't believe that. And when I say that, there's such a thing as character, and it's reflective even when you start watching and consuming media. You can tell when someone's full of crap. And to be honest, when Eliza came on Tim's last podcast and was talking about the dude in Romania, and now she was advocating for some of those, and Tim pushed back, she didn't give me enough answers to make me even think she was legitimate. In fact, the pushback she got from Luke and from Tim kind of let off like, okay, you're being obtuse is the best way I could put it. You're not being forthcoming about what you know, what you're saying, and while you don't have to give out every detail for a survivor story, you damn well need to justify it in today's day and age, because we've all lived through the Me Too bullcrap, and we've all been smacked with that. So if it's real, it's real. If it's not, it's not. And for her to sidestep Tim and Luke's questions about what is a survivor and what makes you do some of the stuff you do, that told me enough already. You just added the icing on the cake, Jeremy, when you showed off exactly what the idiots were doing. You know, you're right. This was a nothing burger, and she shouldn't have went after Brittany or anyone else. It would have blown over. But we're at this point where, man, you guys in the cultural space, you're becoming derivative of yourself. And how do we fix it? That's why I started the other two podcasts. One of them's kind of Your Donut, You Eat It. It's kind of like an audio vlog. And this one, and this is why it sucks. My lead story today is about that poor Republican lady, or that poor city council lady. I really don't care about her politics, that was shot while she was doing her thing. This lady was a volunteer EMT. Sounded like she was trying to be a really good, upstanding person, despite being in politics. Maybe she had enough and decided that's what she had to do to get people to come back around. And it sucks that there are so many people that can't take criticism on the chin and are willing to blow up everything or hurt someone in the process. Now, when I left the job I just had, there are some bad feelings between me and one person there, I'll admit that. But ultimately, I help build the ship that they're doing. But there comes to a point in time where you have to ask yourself, is this really what I want to do? And the answer for me was no. I, for the longest time, thought I could help kids by enabling the staff to do what they need to do. And little did I know that that staff probably shouldn't be there, because there's a lot of clock punchers. There's a lot of people in the K-12 world that are there to earn a living, and that's it. And you have to be mission-driven if you're going to be in K-12. And I say that because you're dealing with some of the most precious things on planet Earth, kids. I'm a product of K-12. I'm a product of, a community college. I have an associate's degree. I worked my entire life to get my education and get my job skills set out to work. I think I'm abandoning him completely because I've been burnt out. For 12 years, I worked for a K-12 entity. And in that time frame, I had to deal with a school shooting, floods, fires, custody disputes, having to deal with locked doors and things like that. That made me realize that I have been pushed squarely out of anything that should have just been an IT-related job. I was a leader, so they said, but they didn't like what I had to say a lot of times. And that seems to be the case. You don't listen to dissenting opinions, and that's the problem with society. Too often we're sitting here thinking about people trying to roll up and give you their 2 cents and whether or not you should listen to it. In reality, the only people you need to really listen to is yourself and your faith and your own mindset. Because if you're true to yourself, you're true to your character, you're true to everything else will follow. And it's taken me the better part of 45 years to figure out that as much as I had those voices in my head that gave me stupid-ass ideas and planned bad things for myself, you don't listen to those. But you need to be able to step away from something and say, I've done the best I could. It's your turn. That's what I've done in my former career. Now I'm looking for my audience and to take guidance from people that matter so that I can start improving not only my podcast, but the other aspects of my life. I think the rest of the world is in the same boat. We're in a very unsure time after the COVID crap, and it looks very much so like the world is falling apart. I have great confidence that a good chunk of the world may fall apart, but the United States won't. Because of the people, because of the spine, because of you being able to say, no, I'm not doing that. No, I won't compromise on that. Because character matters, and it always has and always will. And that's why when I look at things around and say, this is why it sucks, yeah, it does. But you know what? Let's highlight it so we know to do better. This type of shooting that killed this poor woman is indicative to people that think they're not being heard. It's also indicative of crazy people that spoons are on the moon, that you're taking all their spoons and putting them on the moon, as Tim says. As you can tell, I'm a fan of podcasts, of all the stuff in the culture war space. But I know my place. I'm breaking into this place. I know things about technology and firearms that I'm just now trying to put out in the world so people can see it. One thing I learned at being in technology for 23 years, not just working in it, but living it, breathing it, doing the whole thing, is that a lot of people are afraid to do something until you show them how simple it is, because they're risk adverse. And in today's day and age, if all you're going to ever do is be adverse to risk, you're never going to succeed. You're never going to get past the ball to the next phase. That's what I got to say. is this culture that we're seeing, this lack of diversity, and I say not diversity, cultural diversity. I mean diversity in storyline and plot and the reason why you should be consuming the product to begin with. It's all the same. Whether it's right crap, left crap, it's all crap. Get the politics out of it. Give us good storylines. Give us good things that we can all rally around. Then you can say, hey, these are my politics. But until then, all you're doing is splashing around, making a jackass out of yourself, and not getting very far in the punch. So let's fix it. You know, I think it's cool as hell that Jeremy trolled Timcast when he was being swatted and and advertised this coffee brand. You know, I'm currently in that point where I'm unemployed, so the money is tight until I get my payout, which should be next month. But with that, I have some people I've already made a list that I'm going to be supporting. Jeremy's one of them, because I want to try it. So I ask you guys to look at these new cultural offerings, from books, movies, to podcasts, whatever, with a different eye. And think about, how does this fit? Are they there telling me the truth? Are they there spreading the same crap we see on the news? Or are they actually going farther and deeper? And in the gun space, I don't like to talk about politics, but I'm one of the only 2A guys that will continually talk about politics, and that's how the New Mexico Black Rifles Operators Union came into being. So I hope I get some traction on this podcast and your Donut You Eat It also, because they are culturally relevant, and they're not 2A stuff. They're entirely different. I'm trying to get away from the political line, and I'm looking at news and stuff and seeing why it sucks. But there's always that hope that we can make it better. Like, share, subscribe, be great.